want me to transfer you to where he is?
And welcome back to part 23 of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, where today we're finally going back into the Amala network to advance the plot, to check on Isamu and find out what's happened to him, because he's been in here for a while, and it does strange things to people if you stay in the network for a long time. So let's hopefully he hasn't gone completely deranged. But as you can tell, and there is something that's kind of interesting when you first play it. After you do that first first part, like before you even get into the gameplay, where you're just running around the medical center and you're talking to the characters and getting a feel for them, it gives off a very different impression of what the game's going to be compared to what it actually ends up. And it's something that kind of crossed my mind when I was recording the end game later on. I was like, wow, the way this game starts and the way it ends is so radically different. But we're back in the Amala network. We're not dropped off immediately where Isamu is. And just like before, you've got all these little mazes and gimmicks you need to use to work your way through it. But this isn't the same area as we were in before. You can actually find it on the map if you look on the map and start scrolling through the floors and start looking around. Like, we're far away, but the map data of where we were the first time we were in the network is still present. Like, we're still in the same dungeon. The game counts it as such. It's just we're in a different area of it, and we're not returning to that first area ever. In the same vein, once we're finished here, we won't be returning to this area either. The Amala network persists as a one and done, no matter what. Every time you're done with an area, you're never touching it again for the rest of the game. Which is why it's important to try not to miss any loot as you go through it. Even though, ultimately, there's never really any, like, drastically special loot. Like, there's no loot that you'll feel like you're suffering by not having. Like, they're all basic stuff that just kind of help feed you along. You do get the odd encounters like this one, though, where there's, like, 7 enemies. And it's like, well, you need to kind of, deal with as many of them as possible in one go. Because if it decides it's their turn, that's potentially 7 turns if none of them miss on you. And even though they're weak, that adds up, especially if they all target the same person. But as we're working our way through here, it's like getting more encounters we've seen many times before. Because you're going to start getting a lot of... That is something else, actually, before I start the next thing I wanted to talk about. Actually, I've got a cutscene, so I have to do it afterwards.
He may be up ahead. When you find him, get yourself out. The terminal's acting out. It's not like it should be.
What I was going to say is, starting from around now, moving on throughout the rest of the game, you're going to experience that every single new environment you go to, it's a strong mixture of new and old in terms of enemies. Like, it's not all going to be new encounters. There's going to be a number of them that you fought in the past 2 or 3 dungeons in a row. And it's just going to consist with that. What's with all the visitors these days? Take that human kid wanted not too long ago. Honestly, I don't care who comes in, as long as they keep their distance. Fair enough, social distancing. Somewhere around here is a save, which is what I'm looking for. I'm sure there's like a save room around here somewhere. But because of that, it's the same that's happened in other games where this has happened that I've recorded. It ends up getting slightly awkward, because then I have to debate with myself, well, it's a new dungeon. Do I keep the fights in because it's or do I get rid of them because they're an old enemy? And for the most part, I kind of treat every dungeon as its own unique beast, which, if you recall many moons ago, is exactly what I did with Neptunia V2R. If an enemy returned in a following dungeon, I showed the first fight against it in that environment. I made it dungeon specific was the count for it. But in this game, some enemies really genuinely do not change whatsoever between dungeons. And so I take it as come and go. If we enter a dungeon and literally the very first fight we go into is a fight I skip, it's literally because it's the same enemy we just fought in a previous dungeon. If there's like a 2 or 3 dungeon gap, and then the enemy returns, I'll keep it in, because we haven't seen it in a while. But if it's literally, we've just fought more of these, and now we're somewhere else, and we're just fighting more of them, unless something interesting happens to justify keeping it in, I just drop it. But I want to spend a minute to talk about something that was very significant to me yesterday as we work our way through the maze that can be the Amala network. and that's the 30th anniversary symphony celebration of Sonic the Hedgehog. It was so much more than I think anyone was either expecting or hoping. It was amazing. It was so goddamn good. It was like, I can't recommend it enough. If you've ever even vaguely played a Sonic or been vaguely into Sonic, watch it. It's free on the official Sonic channel. It's 2 hours long. The entire first hour is a symphony orchestra of like classic Sonic tunes across the entire franchise. They do 1, 2, 3. They do a Game Gear melody. They do a Sega Saturn melody. They do an adventure stuff. They do Unleashed, which Unleashed, I'm going to be honest, Adventure 1 and Unleashed's part of the symphony both made me tear up. Because Sonic Adventure, I've said many times before, is the very first video game I ever completed, and Sonic Unleashed is by far my favourite Sonic. And I know Unleashed is not everyone's favourite, but it means a hell of a lot to me. And so, it's something that's always had a really strong part of my heart, especially because I was like 9 or 10 when it came out, so it was like really significant to my childhood. And so I teared up during that. But they had Lost World, they had Forces, which I'm going to tell you right now, the only good track in Forces is Infinite's theme, and the fact that they had Infinite's theme in it kind of helps add to my point. They did Sonic Colors, which I think it was wise that they did Sonic Colors like right near the end of the melody, considering that remaster's coming out later in the year, which I will be picking up and will be doing a Let's Play on. I just don't know where I'm going to squeeze it in with all the plans I already have for what I want to do this year in terms of recording and Let's Plays. But I will do Sonic Colors, because Sonic Colors is a blast. But then they did an intermission, which was adorable because it was the Chow Garden, and everyone wants the Chow Garden to come back, because it was the most, ironically most fun thing about the Sonic Adventure titles, was raising the Chows, getting them to be little soldiers and little everything, whether you wanted to be racers or swimmers or fighters or whatever, and then setting them out to little competitions, like a group of kids playing, and just watching them watching how it goes down and seeing them grow up to adulthood. And like, it was so much with it that made it so fun. And so for the intermission, they did an orchestral version of like the Chow Garden theme, and just showed footage of different like breeds of chows doing different things, just messing around, like trying to learn to swim. One of them was playing with maracas, like one of them evolved and like grew up. Like, there was all these little things, and it was so charming. Like, everyone in the chat turned into proud parents all of a sudden. And then the second half was just the good shit. Like, the symphony stuff was extremely nostalgic and extremely emotional. The second half was, but Sonic also has really badass music, despite what people tend to think and how much people try to ignore Sonic. So we're gonna do Reach for the Stars and Speak With Your Heart, which are two songs that I've never really given that much credit for, because when Sonic Colors first came out, which both of these songs come from Colors, it was just after finding out that Sega were kind of soft rebooting Sonic, and so getting rid of a lot of the old, and one of them was Crush 40. And Crush 40 was the band of my childhood. Crush 40 is one of my all-time favourite bands, and they always stuck with me because I was a Sonic fan since as young as I can remember, and so their music has always been around, considering I was born in the late 90s. And so I grew up mostly in the early 2000s, where every single game that was released by Sonic Team had Crush 40 music in it, regardless if it was main or spin-off. It was so dominant by them. So when they left, I was slightly bitter at the time, but I've come around since then. I can appreciate the songs. But the point I'm getting is that they did those first, and they did rock orchestras. So they kept the symphony around and did like a rock concert with it. And it was so damn good, and I was like, this is amazing. The only way this could possibly get better is if they get Crush 40 to do any song. And then they did like Endless Possibility, and they got Nate Likes to Battle to do it, which I was really like a pleasant surprise to see that. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I heard a slight mumble of like a thunder crack, and literally the split second I heard the I immediately out loud went, open your heart. It's like, it's Open Your Heart. They're going to Open Your Heart. Please tell me they've got Crush 40 coming back to do it, because they were the ones that wrote the fucking song. And then it came up with the logo of Crush 40, and I saw Jun Sonoya, I saw Johnny, I saw the whole Crush 40 lot come on stage, and there's like the rock orchestra still powering them on, and they fucking aced it. Like, I know I'm getting like hyped again already, but I can't stress enough, as someone who's lived with Sonic for such a long time, despite how many stumble steps Sonic's had over the years, which is someone who's quite defensive about Sonic. I'm still not ignorant to it. He has had a lot of missteps. It was such a beautiful, perfect thing for Sonic's 30th. It was such a concentrated brilliance for it. It was like everything I ever hoped for. And it was like even little things that they did I Am All of Me, and it ended up trending on Twitter that evening. Because I'm in the UK, so it started at 8 PM, so this was like 9:30, approaching 10 PM at night, and I was just jamming to it, like singing along and just having a blast. Like, they did I Am All of Me, it's like the best version I've ever heard of that song. They did Nights of the Wind, one of my personal favourites, and Johnny, just before it started, said, oh, by the way, this is one of my personal favourites, and I was like, yo! Night of the Wind is such an underrated song. Every track from Black Knight is super underrated, in my opinion. I love that soundtrack. And then, like, at the end, like, they kind of pretend to wrap it up and said, do you want one more? Do you want one more? Alright, let's get Nate Likes the Battle in again, and let's do Escape from the City. You know, one of the most iconic songs of the early 2000s from Sonic the Hedgehog. I'd say even nowadays, it's still one of the most iconic Sonic the Hedgehog songs, Escape from the City. And everyone sung along. Like, literally everyone was singing along to it, because it is the song. But it's not the ultimate song, it's just one of the most iconic. The most iconic. As much as it's not my personal favourite, I can't deny how fucking amazing it is and how well iconic it actually is. And that's Live and Learn. And after that, they went, oh, no, you think we're still done? No. We have Live and Learn with a rock orchestra rendition of it. And I can't stress enough, it's the best version of Live and Learn I have ever heard. It's not even close. It's so fantastic. Like, it's so phenomenally, mind-blowingly brilliant. And like, it wrapped up, and they were doing a little credits bit with like Friends playing, and there's like still like a little orchestral flair with like the track Friends, which is a track I think Hyper Potions made. It was just, everyone was buzzing. It's the only time in my life I've looked at the YouTube chat and everyone's been in good spirits. There's no one bitching about random things like, say, a Nintendo Direct chat. It was no one saying, oh, I wish they did, oh, I wish they did. Everyone was absolutely buzzing. Everyone was like singing along. Everyone was like sending hearts through chat. Everyone was thanking the music team and just having it was like a concert. It was like a digital concert. It's the best way to do it. And everyone got that post-concert cool down afterwards when it ended. Everyone was like, well, that was amazing. Now what? Like, everyone was just kind of sitting awkwardly in their rooms afterwards, like, okay. Like, 'cause I made a long thread talking about it on my Twitter. Which, yes, I do have a Twitter, but I got a sidetrack for a second, because we got a rematch of a boss we fought the last time we came into the network. Spectre, it didn't die, he's back. And I kind of talked over the entirety of the main puzzle. There's a part with corridors where if you take the wrong corridor, certain other walls will close, so you end up more limited. If you leave the area and re-enter it, it completely resets the puzzle. But taking set route takes you to set loot, so if you just follow what I was doing in the recording, you'll do fine, despite the fact I spent the whole of it talking about Sonic. But this boss is a little bit different than the last time. Every time you encountered Spectre, it works slightly different than the previous time you encountered it. I learned new magic, I eat you. Now, this is the gimmick. He's got a dangerous spell in the form of Megiddo, which is almighty, so it's non-elemental and will hit nonetheless. But he can't just use it. He starts with something like 3 MP. So he's going to be spamming the hell out of Mana Drain to make enough MP so he can use Megiddo. If you, like, super go all in on Mana Drain in return, you can push his mana limit to straight 0. And if you do it, then Mana Drain will not work either. And what you're seeing here is me showcasing that literally every form of magic won't work. It's physical or bust in this version. But you see, now he has enough MP, so he'll unleash a Megiddo. It doesn't hurt too much, because we've just done the 3rd Kalpa of Amala, so we're a higher level than we're probably expected to be at this point. Like, we probably should have done this first, and then did the 3rd Kalpa, but because I've always done the Kalpas the very second they are available, at the moment you can do them, I stop everything to go do them. It just ends up that way in points. So what I do instead is start prioritizing buffing my team instead, and then just start ripping with physical and start working my way through them. I'd say of the Spectre encounters, because we've got another encounter against these guys later on in the game as well. This is our second of 3 fights. This one's probably the most manageable once you know what you're doing. If you have Daisojo with Meditate, you're fine. You're honestly fine. You can just keep at it. It's worth mentioning, though, is that they all count as their own entity. So if one of them uses Mana Drain, only that one gets the MP for it. So if you use meditation, like say with Daisojo on 1, and it only takes like 9 or 10, and so you go, oh, that one's out of MP. Treat it as only that one is out of MP. If a Megiddo still comes your way, don't think, well, how did they do it? They have 0 MP. No, it's just that specific one is out. So if you can make it so all 6 of them are specifically out, you're fine. And that was me just almost proving a point to myself that yes, indeed, every single element is blocked. Because the Zan was the only one I hadn't tried, so I'd go out of my way to do it. But back on the topic of Sonic the Hedgehog, I just can't word it properly just how buzzed I was. And so I made a big point of it on my Twitter, and that is something that it's on my about on my YouTube, but I never really bring it up. I do have a, like, I say official, but official Twitter that I use, that I talk about a lot of stuff outside of just the gaming sphere, but do talk about my Let's Play stuff here and there every now and then. So if you're up for that, you're welcome to follow me on it if that's something you're even vaguely interested in. I'll put my handle on screen. It's like at Rob_M_Maurice, which is just, it's my full name. My middle name starts with an M, so it was just easier to do that when I was making it. But it's my main place to go when I do a lot of game talk stuff and just talk about the stuff that interests me, whether it's stuff I'm excited for or stuff I want people to know more about. It's just me in my purest form. It's not me in these pre-recorded videos where, like, I have things I want to say and go through, and I'll talk about them, and I usually end up running out of time because there's only so much time in a video I can talk about X and Y subjects. It's just me kind of freeballing and being myself. I don't respond to DMs though, and it is, like I said, entirely my thing, so I'm not going to bend to the whim. Like, if it's like, oh, if someone goes, oh, Rob, take this out, if it's not my thing, I'll just be like, okay, cheers for naming me, but it's not my thing, if that makes sense. Like, I won't be going out of my way to try and be the game news guy that talks about everything. I very much stick to my own devices with it. But if that's something you're even vaguely interested in, then yeah, feel free to hop along. But next time I do a proper update video, which won't be for a little while, but whenever that day comes when the next proper update video goes in, I'll probably make a bigger point of mentioning it. Because although I don't get any money out of this, nor am I really that fussed about getting any money with it, I would love to have more people join along and just kind of hop along for the ride and be like, hey, this is cool, hey, this is not cool, let's do, well, do you want to try this, or let's do this together. Like, it's like when I do my live streams. I love doing my live streams, so I get to talk with you guys. It's just I've had 0 free time recently, so it hasn't happened. And I will make some free time. At the end of the month, Doki Doki Literature Club Plus comes out, and I want to do something with that, because I think it would just be a fun stream to do. Like, I think it'd be a fun live stream to do with you guys, to see what Plus adds. Because I've played, like, full disclosure, I've played and finished the original, and so I know what to expect throughout all of it. So if you're expecting, like, a blind reaction playthrough sort of thing, you're not going to get that. It'd be more something that we could just share together, with the assumption of everyone watching it knows what Doki Doki is. So it's just a thing together where all of us kind of sit around and see what Plus adds, what it's changed, how it alters things, especially because it's on console. So a couple factors of it I'm curious to see how they handle. Mainly being the whole files of the game slowly but surely start getting deleted, and to finish it you have to catch on and delete something yourself. Unless they make it kind of like a mock-up menu, like in the game they make something that pretends to be a file that you delete, which I think would lose the impact if you know it's just a mock-up version and not legit. But we'll see. It was a thing that I think Undertale had a problem with, where that game like has like a forced hard crash on the PC version. When it came to console, it's like, well, we can't make a forced hard crash a deliberate feature because of how the consoles work, so they had to think of a way to work around it. And to be fair, I've never played Undertale on console to even find out how they worked around it in the end. I just know they would have had to, because the consoles wouldn't have accepted it. With how fickle they can be, it would have had a fight about it. Especially because the crash and the crash log happens before you're even told, like before anything can register. And where the PC game registers certain things in the save before it puts the crash through, it would have been really awkward to sort out. But once you've done that second Spectre fight, you are pretty much done here. And this shadow that pops up is kind of just a checker to see if there's any interest in you going down the Isamu reason path, like going down that ending. Because I'm going true demon, and so I'm going on the mentality of screw everyone, I'm not very friendly to this shadow. You. What's your name? Sure, I'll say my name. I see. You're Master Isamu's. You. Solitude. You like solitude? This has to do with reason. So I'm gonna say no, because I'm not interested. You. No good. Maybe. Differ from Master Isamu. Can you live on your own? I mean, I guess. I see. Keep it up. I'll live on my own, too. I am you. So that shadow was more of like a tester to see if there's any interest on the player to do the Isamu path ending. Which, since I'm not, that's why I was kind of saying like, no, I'm not interested in Solitude. But we've got a lengthy cutscene where we're going to really see what Isamu's thought process is as he's now more functional in developing his reason.
Hey, long time no see. Don't know if you're here to help me or hurt me, but either way it's pointless. The me who used to wander this world aimlessly is dead. I'm done with all the bullshit. What you see before you is the new me, the true master of Amala's power. To be honest with you, I stopped caring about people entirely. And the moment I did, I figured out exactly how I want the world to be. The way I see it, there's me and there's everyone else. Most people don't even notice I exist. They don't care about me, and I sure as hell don't care about them. To me, that's neither empty nor sad. In the end, we're all in the center of our own little worlds. And isn't that the way it should be? Wouldn't you be happier in your own private sanctuary? One where you had full control. And that's what you get with my reason. The reason of Musubi. Doesn't sound like a bad deal, does it? Wouldn't it be nice to have a world to yourself?
Careful, agreeing with Isamu here will directly affect your ending. So you need to disagree with him if you don't want to side with him.
You wouldn't get it? Guess it wouldn't matter to someone who gave up his humanity. As for me, I'm gonna create the world of Musubi and prove my ideal is right. Maybe you should spend some time alone, and then you'll see.
Isamu's reason is entirely around the idea of everyone should have their own personal bubble paradise, and it's something you'll already be considering the moment you think about it. Every single one of the three main reasons we're going to be encountering are interesting but incredibly flawed. But we've got more scenes, so I have to add to that later.
Too bad he got away. I can go after him. That way he won't have to bother with Amala anymore. Sorry, but I can't help you right now. I need to concentrate on this. If there's somewhere you want to go, don't wait for me. If not, why don't you check out Asakusa? Who knows? You might find something new.
Isamu's reason is entirely based around the idea of everyone should be able to make their own perfect world. Everyone should be in their own isolated paradise alone, where they never have to face hardship, because if it's something they wish upon, it just happens, but it's in their own world. Like, it's like every single human being has a world to themselves. That's the world of solitude that Isamu is fighting for and is going to start working towards. If you agree with that reason and continue to agree with him, you will side with him and eventually get the ending where you make that happen by siding with his reason. But the obvious flaw is that no one faces any hardship in that world. No one has anything to grow or learn from, and no one has anyone else. Everyone is just in their own isolation where they get whatever they want whenever they want, making it an extremely boring existence. So that is something that we can't just allow to happen. It's a philosophy that they're going to try and talk about more and more, and the whole point of it is that they don't want you to agree with it necessarily. They just want it to be a discussion. And it's the same with the other two reasons, as and when they get added as well. All the reasons, so to speak, in this game are interesting but flawed concepts that you just consider on your own terms. And if there's one that you agree with to an extent, then you can choose to go down that ending if you so choose. Or if you don't agree with any of them, that's when it leads to the idea of the neutral or demon ending, or if you're playing Maniacs onwards, the true demon ending, which is what I'm going for instead. But after we've done all that, our next destination is going back to Asakusa, because some of the land was previously caved in by like land mass and dirt and mud or debris or whatever, and some of it no longer has that. So more of Asakusa is now available for you to explore. So it's what you want to do. It's what you were kind of like implied should be doing when we came back. It's like, well, if there's nothing else to do, you might as well look around some new areas in Asakusa. And this isn't the only time this happens as well. There's another point later on where the path onwards only becomes available because another route through Asakusa opens up, and it will lead to a different exit which will allow us to proceed onwards. And that other exit is like right at the entrance. It's that tunnel immediately on your left past the 4 shop centers, like the safe space bit of town, where it's like the compendium, the Cathedral of Shadows, not the compendium. The Cathedral of Shadows, the Fountain of Life, the shop, and the terminal. You saw a slight cut there. That cut wasn't an encounter, I don't think. I think that was... It might have been, actually, but I don't think it was. There's a couple cuts here, because I remember when I was recording this, I got interrupted a lot. Which is the other reason why this video ended up slightly longer, because I keep on had to go back and cutting out dead air where I wasn't doing anything. Oh, these guys are worth talking about. Because that enemy is the one that on the first Kalpa, if you go to the Shady Broker in the Labyrinth of Armada's first Kalpa, you buy that's the demon you get if you buy it from him, and it comes equipped with the skill that makes it lower encounter rate, the skill that boosts encounter rate, the skill that makes it so damage floors won't hurt you, and the skill that makes it so dark areas are lit up. So he becomes an all-in-one utility demon that you don't bring into battle, you just keep around to help with like the needless background work. It also has the skill that acts like a smoke ball. It's a free escape from battle. So actually I say that it might actually be worth keeping him in your party if you're trying to get through a spot. Like if you're going for the 250,000 marker on the second Kalpa, like, you know, if you go there early to try and get the money reward, bringing him along might be a wise idea, because you can lower the encounter rate, and then anytime you get into an encounter, the moment it's its turn, assuming it lives the first onslaught, use its smoke ball based skill and get out of there. Oh, Mystic Chest. Mystical. Diamond. Oh, that's actually quite nice. In terms of the gems you want to get, diamonds, jades, and I think emeralds are like the main 3 that if you take it as a good thing, because you can trade them for pretty decent stuff. Oh, and sapphire. Sapphire's pretty decent as well. Whilst the rest, they're still good, but they're not as good, or they're just alright. It's just what you want out of the shop. and is a unique enemy, I suppose. The thing you gotta be wary of is, like, so we fought them in the labyrinth, but this is where you fight them normally. Usually, is that I think it's electric. They either block or reflect, and so you just gotta be wary of your magic spam. If you go into a fight with them, don't just throw everything at them because it might come back at you. It's something that does show its age a little bit with this game. If you only prioritize magic and don't really give it a second thought, it will eventually come back to bite you. Because this game doesn't have like a reminder analysis. Like a lot of games after this make it so there's a dedicated button, and when you press it, it will tell you what you've already uncovered on an enemy. So if they were weak to fire, you press a button and it says you've previously discovered this enemy was weak to fire. You don't get that in 3, you have to just hard remember it. But we got another cutscene. When you come back to Ikebukuro, Ikara is here for you.
An unexpected actor making his way on stage. It's been a while since we last met, young man. Or should I say, demi-fiend. To be frank, I've never given you much thought, but it seems our paths were made to cross, even from the very start. I'll have you know, I accumulated enough Magatsuhi for creation the moment I destroyed the mantra. That's why I didn't bother stopping you from reaching the obelisk. Part of it was that I wanted to verify whether you were truly the demi-fiend. However, not only did you defeat my subordinates, but you single-handedly set the maiden free. The strength of the demi-fiend as written in the scripture of Miroku. It was beyond my expectations. Perhaps you might wish to cooperate in delivering Shijima to the world. Consider man's desire as a flame. When small, it is warm and comfortable. But the flame soon erupts into wildfire, devouring everything in its path and leaving only ashes in its wake. Mankind grew to covet such fire. We became dependent on its warmth and averted our eyes from its all-consuming nature. Rather than blaze a path of ruin, we should lay down our fires for the world's sake. By doing so, a life of repose would in turn be promised to us. What is desirable? What is undesirable? It is not man that makes the distinction. It is the world. Therefore, humans are best suited as its beacons. Lights that spin quietly, sometimes bright, sometimes dim, all pulsating in perfect harmony. This is the highest form of existence there can be. Do you not agree that the world should be ruled by serenity?
Agreeing with Hikawa will lead you into Hikawa's ending. So once again, I am declining it.
You are a mere demon after all. I was wrong to think that you would understand my ideal. It is now time for us to part. I will not feel at ease until all this is over. Do you not sense something wicked in the air? Someone is scheming to ignite the ember that still glows within the remains of Gozu Tenno. I must not falter while others strive to establish their foolish reasons. It is I who will create the new world.
Hikawa's reason is the reason of stillness. It is the idea that everyone shares a mind, so no one is unique, and everyone as a perfect group become a shared utopia. That everyone is of one mind, of one soul, of one spirit, of one heart. Everyone is truly just an equal being of mind, thought, and body, and nothing else. And that is extremely flawed, because it destroys any kind of individuality, it destroys any kind of uniqueness of any soul. But everyone develops as one, as a system.
What I am about to say is critical to our future. Each one of you has worked hard for our peace, ever since we escaped from the mantra. But Another power is being born that can potentially bring our efforts to naught. Yes, it's happening in Yoyogi. This evil power will take form at Yoyogi Park. Right now, it is but a mere shadow. However, when it takes form, it will have enough power to change the face of the world.
Yoyogi?
What an evil power!
But we should not fear this. We have learned to work together. If we join forces, we will be able to fight this evil power. Let us work harder and prepare for that time. We will not fall to the power that is brewing in Yoyogi Park. The future is there for us to change. We will create our own path. There will be an end to our journey. A world where we are free from suffering. Yes, the world of mannequins will surely come.
Speaking of paths opening up in Asakusa, what he was talking about there is that now another path has been opened up to us in Asakusa that will lead us to an open space that will eventually take us to Yoyogi Park. Going to Yoyogi Park is what I consider breaking into the third act of the game to an extent. I'd say it's more so when you're done with it that you're breaking into it than when you start it, but you are later in the game now.
HQ right now. Naturally, that's the mannequins all worried. Could be the work of former Mantra members, but I doubt they'd try anything without a leader. Which reminds me, I've heard talk about Futomimi as of late. Maybe those mannequins are up to something themselves.
And that is teasing something that will be added upon later. Something is starting to happen over at Mantra HQ right now. We just can't see it yet. We need to go later in the game, and then when it develops more, then we can go see it. But in the main path, if you just break a left over here, firstly, the menorah will go off, but this is the path you need to take to Yoyogi Park. Only if you've killed the other 3 horsemen will the menorah react. But there's an evil power in Yoyogi Park, but there's an evil power that comes our way. As you proceed onwards, you will immediately run into the path of the 4th and final horseman, and so we need to stick around to do it, because we need to working towards that 4th Kalpa, the last check requirement before we can access the rest of the labyrinth.
It is time to settle this, once and for all. Let us see whether or not you can best the 4 horsemen. Oh, son of man, can he, with the strength of a demon, overcome the inevitable fate of death? I shall pass final judgment on you! Land of the dead. It encroaches from before you and behind you. Beware, or it will engulf you in an instant.
The Pale Rider is easily the hardest of the 4, and it's entirely because of these guys. On hard mode, well, you'll notice it on normal too, but you really feel it on hard mode. These guys can self-destruct with Last Resort. Last Resort hurts everyone except the Pale Rider. The Pale Rider actually drains from it, oddly enough. Which is wild, you know, have like Drain Almighty, but whatever. It's kind of like a game breaker there to have like something resist Almighty or even react to it. The fact that it just drains it is wild, but whatever. But Last Resort on hard mode will kill you. Especially if both of them Last Resort at the same time, because what determines whether these guys Last Resort or not is their health. If their health drops below, I want to say half, they will almost definitely Last Resort the next chance they get. And so they will just self-destruct and they hurt, and it does insane damage. But if they self-destruct, it hurts everything including their own side. So there's a chance the first one will self-destruct and put the other one on a low enough health to also self-destruct. If you're playing on hard mode, it genuinely does not matter what level you're on, that will kill you. That will end the fight. And it will specifically end Demi-Fiend. And it's like, it's a threat that you need to be wary of, because it will screw you over. Because their hit and evasion rate of Last Resort, even when you nerf the crap out of them, is really high on hard. On normal, it's not so bad, but on hard, it's ridiculous. And as I know, I keep on saying on hard, but it's because we're playing on normal, and we have them for the whole playthrough, so they're nowhere near as bad of a threat. They're still dangerous, don't get me wrong. And if they both blew up, I'd probably just barely survive. But it's still something that you need to keep in the forefront of your mind. This rider is difficult, and it's nothing to do with the rider. What makes it hard is the fact that these lowers can just end the fight when they so choose on hard. Like, people make a joke of it being like the bullshit count. Also, be very wary of that. If anyone is turned to stone, physical attacks become instant kills because you'll shatter the stone. So what happened there is that it used Stone Gaze and turned Kushinada to stone, and because another turn went by, the Pale Rider immediately followed with Blight, which is a physical attack, and that was enough to stop. That was enough to kill. If one of your allies is turned to stone and it gets back to your turn, having Prayer or something that gets rid of status conditions will end it. So don't stress about it too much in that sense. Oh, here's Last Resort. You see, like, he drains it, hurts everyone else pretty hard, even with the nurse, but only Daisojo dodged it. But so on hard mode, you almost never dodge it. It just hits and it kills. Even when you go like full force on the nerfs and whatnot, it still seems to catch. But this is the first real instance of me having to do this, like, in the game, where I've had to go out of my way to revive an ally and bring them back into the fight. And it's something that is kind of costly, and I kind of hope that later down the line they adjust it slightly. Only slightly, but they adjust it. Bringing in a teammate costs a press turn. And the reason why I bring up the fact that I find that always kind of slightly ridiculous is the fact that you have as many press turns as members of your party. So we only have 3 right now. So we bring in another one. That still costs a press turn. So now we're down to 1. And that's kind of what I mean. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that's the situation we're in now. We've got less press turns. If it cost a half turn instead, it would be fine. Because there'd still be a cost, so you can just spam, like, reorganize your team as you see fit. But it wouldn't be as strict as, oh, you've lost a member, well, now you have to really pick and choose when you bring them back in, or bring someone else in, because it's going to cost you a whole press turn. So I get it. I get it needs to have, like, a punishment so you can't spam it, but it needs to be better organized than what we got. But that was the first real instance of me having to actually bring in a party member and do alterations mid-match, mid-fight. And it's something that if you played SMT4, you're probably more used to. Because SMT4 actively encourages that you have essentially 2 full parties on the go. And like as the fight proceeds, especially in the boss fights, you swap out members of your first party to get your second party ready. To make it so you can last more of the endurance of the tougher fights and keep on top of some of the greater threats. And so you become more acquainted to the idea of just swapping as you go. Because you can do it. Right now, if I so chose, I could go to my demon lineup, which is just tapping right a number of times until you get your demon names, click on one, and then it would come up saying swap with who, and I'd click, say, Kushinada, for example, and Kushinada would vanish and the other demon would pop in, and it would only cost 1 press turn to do that. So doing an actual swap costs 1, but so does bringing 1 in full stop. And I think swaps costing a whole press turn, I can understand, but bringing in a new from like a space that isn't there should cost a half just to give you more of a fighting chance. And Sati is getting a little bit of a workout after fusing her near the end of the last part. But we're in a bit more of a rhythm now, so this boss is going to start falling apart because none of the riders have too much health. The only ones that have a significant amount of health are the last 2. Which, speaking of, I need to talk about those last 4 fiends. This is one of 4 of the menorahs we need to obtain to access the 4th Kalpa. Because as I've said before, you need only 1 for the first, which was Macedor. You need 2 for the second, which was Daisojo and Hellbreaker. You need 3 for the third, which is 3 of the 4 horsemen. And you need 4 for the 4th. The 4 are the Pale Rider, which is who we're fighting right now. Dante, who we just fought in the last video, so we have that. Mother Harlot, and Trumpeter. Mother Harlot can be fought in at the end of Yoyogi Park, and doesn't seem to have any kind of other prerequisites, so you can just go fight Mother Harlot when you so choose. But Trumpeter does have a requirement, and it's technically the steepest one of the lot. The Pale Rider doesn't fight you unless all the other 3 riders are done. Trumpeter won't fight you unless literally every single other fiend has been fought and won. Trumpeter has to be the very last fiend you fight. And it's because during that they talk about what your journey by going through all the fiends during it. So if you haven't fought all of them, the cutscene wouldn't make as much sense. And Trumpeter's also one of the most interesting ones because all 4 of the riders' gimmicks are their minions, and they like the contrast of how their minions work alongside them. Like that's the entire gimmick of them, and so it's a gimmick you kind of get bored of because it's 4 fights in a row. But Mother Harlot has an interesting enough gimmick. Dante is obviously Dante, and Trumpeter's gimmick is one of the most fun when you get a rhythm of it. But if you can't get a feel for it, it can be very frustrating. And it's also, just to give you a heads up if you're still following along, now's the sort of time that almost every level up you want to be putting into your vitality, especially if you're going for true demon ending, because it will make the Trumpeter fight more manageable. And simply put, it's not a matter of having the most health possible, it's just about ensuring you don't have the least amount of health in your party when you're at full health. So like where we're at right now, where everyone else has late 300s and we're like middle 400s, that we're perfectly fine. But if your demon allies all of them have more health than you need to start putting levels in your vitality, because Trumpeter will become a problem. Because Trumpeter has a skill that's solely designed to execute low health allies, low health members, and I'll get more into it when we get to it, but I need to emphasize now that now is a good time, if you haven't already, to start putting your level into vitality to make sure you're more comfortable when you get there. But speaking of comfortability, this fight hasn't been too bad because the last resorts have been very controlled, so I pushed for a focus with the idea of hopefully killing the Pale Rider on the next turn. And because the skulls keep on spamming Domina, the skill that is status element based, that's group ride, so Daisojo immediately drains it and ends all their turns, and we keep on getting 3 turns. And now it's over, we can just spam. If you're playing on hard, don't just spam. Still think about it when you get to this point, because you don't want to put them on low health and then they self-destruct and you lose at the last possible second because you get blown to smithereens. So it's like, yeah, I put a level in Vitality. I lean almost entirely into Vitality now. And I get Dekaja as well, which Dekaja I end up keeping for the entire rest of the game, but I have a long-ass time debating what to get rid of, and I eventually actually decide to ditch the defense boost and keep the physical attack boost, because it just has more relevance to my party setup throughout the course of the game. But anyway, next time on SMT3 Nocturne, we're going to start pressing on to Yoyogi Park. But until then, take care now. Peace.